The alarm goes off earlier than most people would expect for someone whose job revolves around dinner service. But being a restaurant chef doesn't begin when the first customer walks through the door. It begins hours before that, long before. The kitchen fills with noise, heat, and pressure. So when he wakes up, usually sometime around 6 or 7 in the morning, depending on the type of restaurant and how much prep is required that day, there's a brief moment where everything is still quiet, where the world hasn't caught up yet. And in that moment, there's already a mental shift happening because even before his feet hit the floor, his mind is already moving through the day ahead, running through the menu, thinking about ingredients, visualizing the flow of service, anticipating what might go wrong and how to prevent it. Because in this profession, preparation doesn't just happen with your hands. It starts in your head. And as he gets up, getting dressed in simple functional clothes that can handle long hours and movement, there's no sense of rushing yet, but there is a sense of purpose, because he knows that once the day truly begins, it won't slow down again until it's over, and whether he eats something quick at home or grabs something small on the way. Food at this point isn't about enjoyment, it's about fuel, because the real focus is what's coming. And by the time he arrives at the restaurant, often before most of the staff has even stepped inside, there's a noticeable stillness that contrasts sharply with what the space will become later. The kitchen is quiet, almost sterile, stainless. Steel surfaces reflecting the overhead lights. No voices, no clatter, no urgency. Just the faint hum of refrigerators and the occasional drip of a faucet. And this quiet moment is deceptive because it's temporary. It's the calm before a very controlled kind of chaos. And as he steps in, tying on his apron, setting his tools in place, turning on equipment, there's no hesitation because this is where the real work begins. Not in cooking finished dishes, but in building everything that will allow those dishes to exist later. And prep becomes the focus, immediately and completely, checking inventory first, opening refrigerators, scanning shelves, taking note of what's fresh, what's usable, what's missing, because even a small missing ingredient can create a chain reaction during service, and if something isn't right, adjustments have to be made early, substitutions planned, quantities recalculated, and once that initial assessment is done, the physical work begins, chopping vegetables with precision and speed, breaking down cuts of meat, preparing stocks that simmer slowly in the background, building sauces layer by layer, tasting constantly, adjusting seasoning because what's being made now will define the quality of what goes out later. And as time passes, more staff begins to arrive, line cooks stepping into their stations, prep cooks organizing their areas, dishwashers setting up, and the kitchen slowly transitions from silence to movement. From stillness to activity, knives hitting cutting boards in a steady rhythm, burners being tested, ovens heating up, and there's an unspoken coordination that starts to take shape because everyone knows their role. Everyone understands that what they're doing now is setting the stage for something much bigger, and as the chef moves through the kitchen, there's a constant awareness of everything happening at once, checking on progress, correcting small mistakes before they become bigger ones, tasting sauces, adjusting textures, giving instructions, answering questions. Because leadership in this environment isn't passive, it's active, constant, and visible. And at the same time, there's a mental tracking system running continuously, keeping track of what's been done, what still needs to be done, how long each component will last during service, because timing is everything. And as the hours move forward, the pace begins to build gradually, not yet overwhelming, but no longer relaxed, and even something as simple as organizing ingredients into containers, labeling them, placing them within reach carries importance, because during service, there won't be time to think about where something is. Everything must already be in place. And as the transition from morning to afternoon approaches, the kitchen reaches a state of readiness. Not calm anymore, but not chaotic yet either. Sitting right at the edge of what's about to happen, because service is coming, and once it begins, everything changes. As the first tickets of service begin to print, there's an immediate and unmistakable shift in the energy of the kitchen, something that transforms the space from controlled preparation into active execution almost instantly, because once orders start coming in, there's no pause, no easing into it, the pace accelerates quickly. And what was once a structured environment becomes a fast-moving system where everything has to happen at once and in perfect coordination. And as burners ignite, pans heat up, and the first orders are called out, there's a tightening of focus that happens across the entire kitchen because this is the moment everything has been leading up to. And as tickets continue to come in, stacking, overlapping, increasing in volume, the rhythm begins to form, not chaotic in a random sense, but controlled in a way that requires precision and constant awareness. And at the center of it all stands the chef, not necessarily cooking every dish, but directing the flow, calling out orders, watching timing, making sure that each station is moving at the right pace, because one delay can throw everything off and communication becomes constant. Sharp, direct, calls being made and repeated, confirmations echoing back, adjustments happening instantly because every order is slightly different, modifications, allergies, preferences, all adding complexity to an already demanding system. And as the kitchen fills with movement, bodies navigating tight spaces, hands reaching for tools, plates being assembled, there's an awareness that has to extend beyond individual tasks. Because everyone has to move as part of a larger system. And as the heat builds, both from the equipment and from the intensity of the work, the environment itself becomes part of the challenge. Sweat forming, hands moving faster, the air thick, with steam and the smell of food cooking at different stages. And through all of this, the chef's role remains constant, watching everything, stepping in when needed, correcting mistakes immediately, tasting dishes before they leave, because quality cannot drop no matter how busy it gets. And as the rush intensifies, there's a point where time begins to feel compressed, where minutes pass faster than expected, where everything happens simultaneously, and yet within that pressure, there's also a strange kind of clarity, because this is where experience takes over, movements become instinctive, decisions happen without hesitation. And the kitchen operates almost like a single organism, each part working in sync with the others. And when dishes start leaving the pass in rapid succession, plate after plate, each one carefully arranged, checked, approved, there's a brief moment of satisfaction, quickly replaced by the next order because there's no stopping. And as the peak of service hits, when tickets are coming in faster than they can be completed, there's a test of endurance, of focus, of discipline. Because mistakes at this point are easy to make, but they have to be avoided. And as the chef continues to monitor everything, adjusting pacing, pushing when needed, slowing things down when necessary, there's a constant balancing act happening, ensuring that speed doesn't compromise quality. And as the rush begins to plateau and then slowly decline, there's a noticeable shift, not back to calm, but to something slightly more manageable, where the volume decreases just enough to allow breathing room. And as the final waves of orders come through, there's a sense that the hardest part has passed, even though the work itself is far from over. As the final tickets are completed and the last dishes leave the kitchen, there's a gradual shift in the atmosphere that replaces urgency with exhaustion, not immediately, but slowly, as the adrenaline that carried the last several hours begins to fade, and what remains is a deep physical tiredness combined with a mental release, because maintaining that level of focus for such an extended period takes a toll. And even though service has ended, the work continues, because closing a kitchen is its own process, one that requires just as much attention and discipline as cooking itself. And as the staff begins to clean, wiping down surfaces, scrubbing equipment, organizing stations, there's a rhythm to it that mirrors the preparation from earlier in the day, a kind of reverse process that brings everything back to a starting point. And as the chef moves through the kitchen, checking that everything is done correctly, ensuring that nothing is left unfinished, there's still a sense of responsibility. Because leadership doesn't stop when the last plate goes out, and as tools are put away, ingredients stored, equipment turned off. There's a gradual quiet that returns to the space, a silence that feels different from the morning, heavier somehow, carrying the weight of everything that just happened. And when everything is finally done, when the kitchen is clean and ready for the next day, there's a moment to step back, to take it all in, because even though it's routine, every service is different. Every day presents its own challenges. And as he steps out of the kitchen, leaving behind the heat, the noise, the intensity, there's a transition into a quieter world, one that feels almost distant after hours of constant movement and sound. And on the drive home, there's often reflection, replaying moments from the day, thinking about what went well, what could be improved, adjustments that can be made tomorrow. Because in this profession, improvement is continuous. There's always something to refine, and when he finally gets home, late into the evening when most people have already finished their day, there's a different kind of quiet, one that allows for rest. And even though he's been surrounded by food all day, what he eats now is simple, almost functional, because the focus isn't on cooking anymore, it's on recovery. And as the night continues, as fatigue fully sets in, there's a sense of completion, not because everything is finished, but because today's work mattered, because something was created, something was delivered. And even though most people will never see what goes on behind the kitchen doors, that doesn't diminish its value because the work speaks for itself. And as sleep eventually comes, there's the understanding that the cycle will begin again. Another early morning, another prep, another service, another test of endurance and precision. And while it's demanding, while it requires consistency and resilience, it also carries a sense of purpose. Because at the end of the day, something was built from nothing. Something was executed under pressure, and for a brief moment, it was experienced by others. And that, more than anything, is what defines the life of a chef.